Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I've been dealing with timing and showing you how to play and showing you how to read music, and we're going to continue with that today. And the first thing I'm going to do is to play a song, and then I'm going back to the original charts just to show you some of the basics of timing. This song I wrote this morning when I got up. It just kind of came to me and I wrote it. This is it. Let me show you some things about it before I begin. Okay, so this is the song. We'll get that set up so you can see that. This is a waltz. And as I said, I got up this morning and it was just on my mind, and I said, I'd better write it down. One thing you need to remember, if you are writing music, if you get a piece in your mind, whether you've heard it before or whether you haven't heard it before, if you get a piece in your mind, you need to script it then, because it won't last forever, and it's very easy for you to lose it and not be able to get it back. And usually it's something that your mind has created, and so therefore it really is a composition. So if you write it out, you won't forget it, and that's what I do all the time. And even if I'm listening to music that I like, a song that I've heard, and I want to remember it, I don't want to forget it, I will script it out, just the melody line, and then when I go back and look at the melody line, I always remember the song and the harmony and everything about it. So let's take a look at this song. It is a waltz, and you have your treble clef here. We're playing in the treble clef. Most woodwinds do. It's in 3/4 time. That means there are 3 beats to a measure. In a quarter note, that's what that 4 would indicate. A quarter note gets 1 beat. It's in the key of G. It has 1 sharp, and it's the F sharp right here. And if you were to count this out, and you'll be counting it out in your mind as you're playing it, because you're not going to be able to count it out aloud because you have an instrument in your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We do have eighth notes here. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 3 quarters. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3. So this total song is based on quarter notes, half notes, and eighth notes, with an occasional accidental thrown in. This is a G sharp. This is an accidental. It's an accidental because it is not in key signature. If it was in the key signature, I wouldn't have to write this accidental mark right here. But it's not in the key signature because we're not playing in a key in which that would normally occur. And so every F that you have to sharp, because that is in the key signature. Now I'm going to play it first, and I'm not going to play it fast, and then I'm going to talk to you more about it. How do you read it? How fast should it go? How fast do you want it to go? And what does the speed depend upon? So let me just play this. It's not very long. Now, that's the whole song. What I wanted to do, what I like to do when I'm writing music, is I like to put in the things that you need to know. Like, for example, if you're studying eighth notes and how they're counted, it's so much easier just to write it in a song. So how fast should the song go? Well, it can go as slow as I played it, or it can go faster. You don't want it too much slower, but partly that's going to be determined by how fast you're going to be able to play these eighth notes. These eighth notes have to be tongued. You can't play a series of eighth notes or faster notes without tonguing them. And so therefore, you have to get used to the fact that you're doing this. And you can't do that without tonguing each particular note. You have to have every single note tongued, and every single note in this whole waltz is tongued. When you get here, I put a half note and a dotted half beside it. That makes that a 3-beat measure. Now this is all right to do that because actually it is in the key of 3/4, so every measure should have 3 beats in it. Sometimes you can split it up for various reasons, but I haven't done that. And this first measure also is 3 beats, 1, 2, 3. Now that's the same. You have to tongue this note because there are no slurs or ties, but that's the same as a dotted quarter would be, as a dotted half would be in terms of timing. So I'm going to take it a little faster, but remember, you have to play, if you're going to play this piece well, you have to play all of these eighth notes. And you have to do it clearly. So how fast can you play an eighth note? Well, it depends upon how fast your tongue can go. That's not too fast for me, but it would be too fast for a beginner, so I wouldn't expect you to be able to play it that fast. But if I want to play it fast, so that's really probably too fast because it was hard for me to keep up with all of the tonguing that I had to do. How do you tongue a note? I've gone over this before, but it bears repeating because it is critical. If you're going to play, you have to be able to play. Very fast tongue notes. When you tongue a note, you put the instrument in your mouth. Of course, you're holding it correctly. Your left hand is on top. The right hand is on the bottom, and you stick the instrument in about 1/3 of the way. Now, it's going to be different with different people, depending upon the shape of their mouths and this kind of thing. But generally speaking, about 1/3 of the way. And then you will put your teeth, your top teeth, on the top of the mouthpiece. And of course, your lip will go in front of it so you don't see your teeth. The lower lip will be covered over your teeth slightly. And when you tongue the note, you're going to put your tongue against the mouthpiece toward the top of the mouthpiece, and you're not going to say it aloud, but it's going to be as if you're saying ta or ta. Whoops, let me get this right. You probably should try to do it slowly at first. You just, once again, the instrument goes in the mouth, you have your teeth on top, on the top of the mouthpiece, you have your lip covered over, your bottom teeth slightly, not a whole lot, but slightly. Now, I tongued each note, and this is what you have to do. There are some times when you'll have a slur. I'll put a couple in here. Now, what I did was I slurred these notes right here, this and this. And the notes that were the half note and the quarter note, I tongued all of those notes because otherwise it's not going to come out clear. If I'll try this. It's not clear if you don't tongue it. It's much better for you to tongue it. Then your notes are clear and they're crisp and you can listen to them. It's easier to listen to them and also sounds just musically a lot better. So the speed that you take it at is the speed that you can do the eighth notes at. And if it's too fast for you to get the eighth notes clearly, every single one of them clearly, then it's too fast. You have to do it at the speed in which you can handle the eighth notes because they are a critical part of the song. Well, what if I took the eighth notes out and I could put in like 2 quarter notes. Let me try it. I'll try it with the 2 quarter notes. Now, I got to look at my music, which is slightly different than yours, but when we get down to that part, I'll start at the top. I will eradicate the eighth notes, and I'll put in 2 quarter notes instead. These are quarter notes, these are quarter notes, these are quarter notes. See what it sounds like. It's just, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way, but the only thing is you miss some sharpness and you miss some vibrancy unless you add those eighth notes, which is why I put them in. The other reason I put them in is that I'm teaching you, if I teach you how to play eighth notes, quarter notes, 16th notes, which is what I'm doing, it's much, I think, more fascinating to learn to play them in a song than it is just for me to tell you this is how you do it. Most of the time, you wouldn't even get that. You would have teachers saying, this is how you play it. And it's boring. You'd much rather put it, or I would much rather put it in a song. But besides, with it in a song, then it has special meaning. It fits into something, and it has special meaning. So I'm going to play this just one more time. I'm not going to do it too fast. And what I want you to do is to look and see if you can follow along what I'm doing. And that will show you the relationship of the eighth notes to the quarter note. Eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes. You have 2 eighths that equal a quarter, and these 2 eighths equal a quarter. 2 eighth notes will equal a quarter. So that's where you get your 3 beats. 1, 2, and 3 and these are quarter notes, so they're 1 count, 1, 2, 3. This is a waltz, so it's 3 beats to a measure. You can have 6/8 waltz time. You know, it doesn't all have to be 3 beats, but this is what's usual. And so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, because that's a half note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you're playing guitar or piano, your teacher might possibly even tell you to count aloud as you're playing. I think it's kind of a trick to do that, a little like rubbing your stomach and patting your head at the same time, because you're really doing 2 functions at once. But I know a lot of teachers that do that, if you can. But when you're playing a brass instrument or a woodwind instrument, it's very hard to do. You can't really do it even with violins because the violin is under your chin. Guitars would be easier. It can be done with pianos. But in order to do that, usually you're practicing a song slowly. So you'd be playing, if this was a piano piece, you'd be playing it and you'd be saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 until you get used to the rhythm of it. And the advantage of doing it is that it makes like an impression on your brain and you don't forget it. You know how skaters skate in the Olympics and how beautiful the skating is? They use a lot of body memory. Body memory means that they have practiced something so much that even if they're nervous and they're frightened and they don't remember things and they get confused, their body just takes over and does it because it's done it so often that it's just natural and the body just takes over and does it. So that's body memory. And a lot of gymnasts have body memory because they've practiced their twists and their turns and their somersaults or whatever that they're doing. Is there such a thing as over practicing? There are some people that think that you shouldn't practice too much, but there are others that think that over practicing, in other words, you know it, you do it well, but you still practice it as if you didn't. That's what helps to create the body memory. And when you create the body memory, then you're going to do things automatically, and that can be a real help if you're performing, especially if you're nervous. So I usually, when I have students and they're in recitals for the first time, I usually stand with them. And I usually play a part with them, not the same part they're playing, but I'll do a harmony part, or maybe we'll switch and I do harmony once and they do melody, and then we do it vice versa. I want them to get used to standing in front of an audience and not being afraid to do that. And in order to do that, I think the best way is that when they're beginning, you stand with them. They feel more secure than if they lose their place or something happens. They don't just freeze in place and they're afraid. You can point. You're right here, or let's do this measure again. And you'd be surprised, kids do get through that, and they really want to play again. And when they get to a certain point, they don't want you to stand up beside them. They want to do it by themselves when they get to a certain point. But the idea is, I don't want students being terrified on their first standing out in front of an audience and becoming afraid, because they won't want to take lessons. They won't want to play because they're afraid of an audience. They're afraid of making a mistake. And if they make a mistake, they think it's terrible. Well, everybody makes mistakes, and it's not terrible. It's just being a human being. So I try to get them to relax before a camera or relax before an audience. And then if they do well, fine. If they make a mistake, so what? You know, there's always next time. They're still growing. They're still learning. And I've seen professionals make mistakes as well. I was at a Boston Pops concert with Arthur Fiedler conducting. This is a story. I'm kind of getting a little off track, but it bears repeating. The trumpet player, there was the first song was a trumpet player, and he had a very difficult trumpet part, and he was scared to death. You just knew it. He was shaking, and you could see him shake. I felt so bad for him. And what Arthur Fiedler did, I thought was remarkable. Most conductors need both hands to conduct. You really do to do a good job. So what he did was he put his left hand on top of the young man's shoulder and held it there through the whole solo to calm him down, and just conducted with the other hand for the entire solo. And it was a fairly long solo. He never did the usual things you do with the left hand because it was on top of the shoulder of the person who was playing the trumpet solo. And he was young, probably early 20s, and he had a very difficult solo, and he just was terrified of the audience. You should try to make friends with the audience. In your mind, they're not your enemy. They don't hate you. They want you to do well. They're plugging for you. And if you can let them know that, if they can feel that, you know, even in terms of public speaking, when I do my fair share of public speaking, I go to a place where I'm going to speak, and I get there early, and I start talking to the people that are there, that are coming in, introducing myself, talking to them, getting to know them. By the time you get up on a stage and you're going to speak, you really know, or at least you feel you know the people. And they're not trying to get you to make a mistake. They're not out to make fun of you. They want you to do well. And so that makes it, if you understand that, a little less harrowing when you go up and do something before an audience. And I'm talking now, of course, of playing the instrument. So let me play this one more time, and I'm not going to take it fast. See if you can follow what I'm doing. I didn't mark it, but it's nice to put a retard toward the end, unless you're planning to repeat it. I didn't put that in. I was just concerned about the eighth notes. So that is the whole waltz. You can play it again if you want it longer. All you'd have to do would be to put repeat marks here and repeat marks here, and you'd play the whole thing again. Even if you don't have those marks there, if you want to play them again, you can play them again. It's not that hard to do. And it really is just kind of a lilting little melody that you can have. One thing I want to mention to you, though, these eighth notes come on the second and third beat. So as soon as you finished with that first beat of that measure, then you immediately go into the, you don't pause between the first, second, and third beats. You go right from the first beat up to the eighth notes, because most people would have a tendency, if they don't know better, they would go, but there is no pause there. It hasn't been written in. If I wanted to write a pause there, I could. I would take and put couple of little dash marks. I probably would put a little fermata or a hold over this, which I didn't do because I didn't have that in mind to do, but I would probably put a little fermata over here, and then I'd put a little slash over here, and that's a tiny break if I did that, and then I'd start the eighth notes. So you have to remember that notes, you play the note until the next note comes. You hold the note up to the full value of the note, then you immediately play the next note without a break, unless it's demarked that way, unless it has a marking that indicates that you do need to take a break, or a composer wants you to take a break. So I think it's better for this piece just to go from one note right up to the eighth notes without a break. And I think it makes it a little nicer song. But if I wanted to do it the other way, I just could have written in that break a couple of slash marks, and that's just a quick break, and then you go on. So at any rate, I think I'm kind of running out of time, but I want to teach you how to play, and I want to teach you how to read music, and I want to teach you timing, and this is one good way to do it. So also I want to, at some point, when I can get it together and all arranged, how to teach you how to write music. And what you do if you hear music in your head. I'm a person that hears music in my head all the time. But that's the way it's always been. And so how do you write it down? How do you script it so that you don't lose it? If you have a melody that comes to you, and you feel that you haven't heard it before, it's like your mind has created a melody, then write it down. You need to write it down. So one of the purposes that I have in teaching you how to read music is that should you ever want to write it, you will have the skills to write it, but I want to go into that further in another segment. So we'll close it here. We'll be doing something else next time, but it will also be in terms of timing, so please join me then.